Hi guys, it's Dr. Dawn Heiman, and today I am so excited for you to meet who I am interviewing. It's Dr. Deanne Rudden, and she is an audiologist extraordinaire who happens to be excellent at social media and even more so storytelling. So Dr. Deanne, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is so exciting to get to talk to you and to your followers because you have a lot of followers.
I have a few followers and we're hoping to get more, and here's why. As you know, I just met you for the first time ever last month, and you asked me to be a part of the Hearing Journal podcast to talk about storytelling.
Yeah, I did, because you're a master storyteller. And I still sit around and think about how we just met about a month ago. And how is that possible? Because I feel like I've followed you and I've known about you for so long. So you were a natural choice when I started thinking about, like, who could I interview about storytelling and who does such a great job out there in the social media world. And you were like at the top of my list. So I was thrilled that you had time to come and chat with me there, and even more excited to chat back today and video. Which I learned so much from you about video. Like, you're my video queen.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, I was so glad that I got to meet you because honestly, I had read a couple books. You know, I read Donald Miller's Build a Story Brand, and I had read another book called Storytelling, and I knew that this is where the world was going, and I kind of thought I was getting it. But after our interview, I went to your class at AAA, and I went mainly because I really wanted to hear what you had to say and see if maybe there was a couple nuggets I would get from this, to be honest, right? And I got so much out of that course that this is why I wanted to do this presentation. I wanted to do this teaching format for audiologists who didn't get to go to the course that day, or there were many going on at the same time, or they didn't get a chance to go to AAA. But you gave so much great content. I learned so much that I think it's a sin if people don't have the opportunity to hear from you and to learn from you. So I am not just trying to, like, blow like wonderful fresh air to you and say, oh, all your accolades. You really are the real thing. And I saw you at ADA a couple years ago, and you by far blew away every presentation there was those 3 days. Your presentation was like a TED Talk. It was everything I had always wanted to do someday. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember, and I never tweet. I tweeted, Deanne Rudden has done it. She's presenting like a rock star. You are a TED Talk person. So I'm going to stop talking. And I would like to know, first of all, your audiology story, and how did you even get this far in knowing any of this?
Well, it's so funny that you bring up that ADA situation, because if you would have been at the year before's ADA, I did a talk with a group of our colleagues. So Jill Caseworm and Abe Bankitis and Natalie Phillips, and we did a group called Women Unite. And so we were talking about different aspects of things that impact us as women. And I had the worst public speaking experience like ever. Like I was so embarrassed. I was like shaking and sweating, and I'm freaking out, and I'm having this whole horrible experience with public speaking. And I just, at that moment, I was like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. And the funniest thing about it is we were like Saturday morning at 9 a.m. or some such horrible time frame where there was probably 10 people in the audience. So it wasn't like I was presenting to like thousands of people. I just had such a breakdown about that moment. And so I started working with a speaker coach. And she is who helped me not only develop my confidence around speaking in public, but also she taught me some of the principles of telling a good story. I would go in to have meetings with her. I did a course with her. It was about a 6-month course that of a small group of us, and then we gave what would be sort of like TED Talks in front of a huge audience of people in Boulder, Colorado. And so during that whole journey with her, every time I would come in to meet with her about, what was I going to talk about, she would say, do you have a story around that? And I would be like, I don't have a story. Like, I don't have a story. I don't have anything interesting. There's nothing about this that's that interesting. And she was like, you need to start finding stories around things you're talking about, because if you're just going to relay facts, it's not all that interesting. So you have to figure out how to tell stories around it. So that's what I tried to do. And funny, I was so nervous at that ADA that you were speaking at, because I was working with her and we had developed the first part of the talk that I ended up doing in Boulder. And she said, you should practice this at the ADA meeting. And I was like, no, they're not ready for that. They're not ready for that. Like, they want the bullet points. This is a professional conference. And she was like, no, trust me. Trust me. If you do the beginning of this talk and then go into your bullet points about whatever you're talking about, you're going to have that audience and you're going to feel the energy shift. And it was funny. It was crazy. It was so funny because she said, watch the audience before you start talking. She goes, I guarantee you this is what they're going to look like. She's like, they're going to be in their phones. They're going to be looking down. And she goes, and then I want you to notice what happens when you do what we've been working on. And it was crazy because I started the music and people went like, I got all these like kind of puzzled looks, like, what the hell is happening? Like, what is this? And I'm just like, I was so nervous. I wanted to stop and go back to the bullet points, but I was like, that's okay.
Meanwhile, though, if I can tell our viewers, like, what it looked like was, so I was probably one of those people on the phone and they're going through the blah, 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 and they're just seriously reading off bullet points. It was so blah about hearing aids or something, whatever. And here she comes up and the screen goes to stars. Was it a blue, like, dark sky with stars or something? And this music starts. And then she's like, imagine. Did you use the word imagine?
I probably did.
You probably did. It was so over the top fantastic. We're like, whoa, like, it was completely different. We were ready, honestly, but it was such a stark contrast from the norm, which was a good thing.
And it's funny because after it was over, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, now I get it. It hadn't made sense to me until that moment. And then it was like, I went back and I was working with Erin to kind of complete that whole journey. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't go back now. Like, I've had that feeling of being able to speak in a different way and to relay information in a different way. And it was like, I can't go back to the way it was. And it gave me a lot of confidence. So, it was kind of a game changer for me.
And rightfully so. And it's at a time like that was revolutionary for our industry. And as the couple of years have gone by, everyone's realizing, oh my gosh, we can't have advertising that's, $4.99 or save $500, or we have the latest technology. It's so boring and blah. And if we want to stand out and we want to differentiate ourselves, or we just want something that is just authentic and genuine, we need to be telling our patients stories. And it's not all about how the latest widget did such and such, or it's not all about price. We actually change people's lives. So I'm so excited that you're here today, because I know you're going to teach us how to go through some methods to try to tell these stories and make it easier. Now, I'll be honest. How many times have I said, I'm going to blog, or I'm going to do a video, or I'm going to do something. I'm going to change what my website says. And then I have writer's block. I get so excited. Right. It's on my schedule. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And that time goes by because I become paralyzed and I don't know what to say. And I don't have a formula. I don't have a starting point. And so this is why you're here, because your presentation, not the ADA one, the AAA one that happened about a month ago in March, and you had these slides and you had these formulas that made so much sense. It calmed me. Your infographics were gorgeous. And so I would like to know, where did you get these tips from? How do you know this? And where can someone else find this? Will you have a cheat sheet? Would you be able to have something for our audience to be able to use that we can have in the show notes afterwards?
Absolutely.
That would be so cool. Okay, good. All right, go ahead. I'll let you talk.
Let me just start with saying, like, I didn't make any of it up. I didn't make up these story formulas. I didn't develop them on my own. They are actually really well-known story formats and copywriting formats. So they're things that you actually already recognize that are available out in the world. But when I started researching storytelling and how to relay that, primarily for social media purposes, because I was looking for a way to take information and condense it into things that were potentially tweetable. So, you know, you don't have an entire blog worth of information to relay that story in, but how can you use well-known storytelling formats to repackage whatever your story is into a smaller format. Now, you could certainly expand those formats and use them in larger formats like blogging or whatever else. But it's nice to just have almost like a formula that you can go off of and take whatever your story is and repurpose it. So,
absolutely. I think if I speak for most people, that if we're trying to get away from price and we're trying to get away from looking like everybody else's website, I even, speaking of that, you actually said that about copywriters. I have sitting here the copywriter's handbook. I got nothing out of it. Like, it was so boring. I didn't know where to begin, because I thought, oh, this is it. I can do this. I can flip what other industries are doing and apply it to audiology. But I couldn't. It was too hard. And speaking of like blogging, there's a bunch of us that are going to try to get together and be guest bloggers for everyone's website, you know, and that is something that I think is wonderful, because then our websites can ping back and forth to each other. But I'm thinking people are going to be able to use your formulas to be able to just write these blog posts, because how many times you're like, oh, what if it's not good enough? What if it doesn't sound good? What if people don't even care? What if I finish my story and I don't even have a point?
Yeah. And I think just sometimes for me, blogging is hard. It's actually for me harder than social media, because, you know, I always talk about social media as almost being like a drive-by. Like, you just drive by and like drop it off and then you drive away. So blogging is hard because you're telling a much more elaborate story and a much deeper, richer story than just the drive-by situation. So having, I think, the ability to just give yourself a container to work within, regardless of how big or small it is, just it takes a little bit of the fear factor out of it, and the self-doubt and self-confidence can come back because you've got a structure that you can follow. So
absolutely. Yeah, you need a structure, especially if you're not feeling confident.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said, like when we talk about the structures, these are not things that I created. I mean, you will recognize these formulas that are used all the time in both storytelling and advertising and social media. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's already out there. We're just repurposing it for our needs, which is
Right.
great.
Can you give us like 2 to 3 examples?
Absolutely. The first one is probably the most well-known story structure, and it's called the Threeact structure. And you'll remember this. So you have like a setup. So you're setting the scene, you're introducing any characters that you might have. Then you have some kind of confrontation that happens, or some kind of problem that needs to be resolved. And then you're going to have a resolution. So how do you resolve that problem or that issue? And then hopefully you're resolving those problems with your services, is how I would describe it. So for instance, if I was going to tell a story, I might set it up and say something like, Joe started having trouble hearing his family's around the dinner table. His family was starting to be frustrated. They started leaving him out of conversations, and Joe started to notice that that was happening. They brought him into audiology consultants and worked with Dr. Heiman, and now they resolved that problem because he's able to hear better with a hearing aid. I mean, that's just a very general way of talking about it, but it's,
It's so good. It's so
set up,
easy.
confrontation, resolution. I mean,
I feel like more so that example seems so easy, but why aren't we doing it? Because it's relatable. We probably all know Joe in some sense.
right.
And even if a family member heard that, it's totally doable. Give me another example. What's another one? That's so good. This is just so good. I can't stand it.
My favorite one is called BeforeAfter Bridge. So before is sort of like describing the world with problem A. So before Joe was having a problem with hearing, and then you do after, which is imagine a world where problem A was solved. So, and then the bridge is, here's how you're going to get there. So let me see if I can come up with one on the fly. So ringing in the ears is a problem that many people have. They hear this ringing and buzzing. It might drive them crazy. They can't get help for it, and it causes them to feel like they can't sleep. Now imagine a world where that was not a problem anymore. Imagine being able to sleep without this lingering ringing in the ears that's driving you crazy. Coming in to see Dr. Heiman for services can help you relieve those symptoms and find peace in your world.
So good. You just thought of that?
That was just off the top of my head, but that's what I'm kind of saying is like, there's a structure around it. I mean, obviously you can flesh it out and make it so it's not just off the top of your head, and hopefully it's something that's reasonably interesting and maybe even unique, which is going to add another element to your story. But having the structure around it gives you a container to tell the story in an interesting way that feels good to people. They get it.
Yes. And they want to know, like, here's the problem, here's the resolution. And oh my gosh, it's spot on. Like, I could use that today. It doesn't have to be in video format. It could even just be one of those things where it's like a slide deck where you make the PowerPoint presentations or have pictures and then words, and then just the words tell the story, and it turns into a video, or just on your website it could say that, an advertisement could say that.
A tweet could say that. You could do that format in a tweet. one sentence for your before, one sentence for your after, one sentence for your bridge.
That's awesome.
Just condense it down, and that could be your story.
So good. Yeah. And you know what? And it's showing emotion. It shows resolution. It shows a solution. It just makes you feel better just hearing that story. You're like, oh, I feel so bad for him. And oh, good, there's a place they can go. Wonderful.
I mean, I think the thing that, people get uptight about when it comes to storytelling is that you really just want to take the human condition, pieces of the human condition. I mean, we all can relate to feeling left out. We all can relate to not being able to connect with people in a meaningful way, or feeling less than. And these are universal truths, universal things that happen to everyone, regardless of hearing loss. But hearing loss just is going to add that element of confrontation or of struggle in the story that you're telling. So, I mean, I think it may not feel unique to us, that the stories that we're confronted with every day, but we're not talking to each other. We're talking to, the general public. Stories of hearing loss are not ones that they hear every day like we do. So
absolutely. And I think the problem in the general public is they hear that first part of the story. They know someone is struggling. They know that they're not doing well. But they're not hearing the success stories. They're not hearing the resolution. They don't know there are solutions because no one's telling these stories.
And I think that they think that the resolution of the story always ends with something expensive, something that doesn't work as well as they want it to. And I think those stories have been out there. And now to counteract those stories, we have to tell the ones where people are excited to come in. People do want to hear better and do improve the quality of their lives, and that is happening. And that it doesn't, necessarily mean, thousands of dollars that people can't afford. That's not the story we want to tell. We want to tell the stories of improving cognition, improving balance, reducing the impacts of tinnitus. I mean, there's so many awesome stories for us to tell that we need to give voice to.
100%. And you know this, like Disney's been saying this for years. If someone has a bad experience, they will tell 12 people. If they have a good experience, they might tell 3. So there could be millions of people who have good experiences, but they don't want to talk about their hearing aids. It's their own secret. And so there are more bad stories out there, literally, than there are good. Right. So it falls on us as the professionals to be able to meet that level and give the good stories too, because rightfully so, a lot of people don't. This is why a lot of people have practices have a hard time getting testimonials, video testimonials, because people don't, they're shy and they're like, thanks anyway. I mean, I hope that everything goes well with your practice and I want you to get new patients, but I'm not ready.
Right. I mean, I think it's even like that fear of public speaking. Like I don't want to be the face of that, or I feel uncomfortable letting myself be seen. And I get that. I mean, I completely get that. I'm much more comfortable not in front of the camera. So I am trying to develop a comfort level with something that is filmed, and to tell stories that are not written down or are not live and in the moment. So, that might linger. Those kinds of stories. So I'm learning a lot from you and getting more comfortable with allowing myself to be on video.
Absolutely. It's hard. But and let's say someone doesn't find anyone who wants to tell their story because they want to keep it private, rightfully so. And when it comes to HIPAA and all of that, do audiologists and hearing centers, do they need to always tell the exact story? Could they ever fictionalize this, you think?
I think that's actually a brilliant way to go about it. You can take, it's almost like based on a true story, right? You can change the names. There's no reason that you can't change the names. And, the universal Joe, universal Mr. Smith, Jane Doe person, and use the story that person has given you to relay what you've heard over and over again. I mean, you can, create a composite patient that you're telling that story about. Obviously you're taking it to the next level, allowing your patients to tell their own stories through your coffee talks. But in the absence of that, you can, I actually keep a story journal of stories that patients tell me, because I'm getting to the point where I don't remember all the stories in the moment, or, if I need to call upon a particular type of story to relay the information that I'm trying to give, I don't want to have to think about it in the moment and just like off the top of my head, remember that story that happened, several months ago. I want to be able to go right to it. So I actually keep like a running list of things.
I love that idea. And especially like I was saying, if you're having writer's block or you go into panic mode, worried about who's going to read this, who's going to see this,
yeah,
and you have a blank wall in front of you or a blank desk, it's hard. I love that. So if there's a story, write it down, and then you just grab that notebook or whatever, and here's your content. Pick one.
Right.
Love it.
And, you can actually even create categories of stories. And this is what working with my speaker coach, Erin, was so great about Erin, and the way that she taught me to think about information is that you want to tell things from 3 different perspectives: from the head, from the heart, and from the core. So the head are just facts, things that, might just be information that, bullet points, so to speak. From the heart, so telling the emotion of whatever is happening. And then from the core, which is like beliefs, universal truths. So if you can package that information into whatever story you're telling, you're going to hit people in lots of different ways where they can relate to them. You hear people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel. Using some of that information to relay what you're bringing.
That is so true. The feeling is definitely something you actually, that reminds me of a marketing ad or something that came through my news feed on Facebook the one day. And it was this, I paused, I had to go back. I'm like, what is that? It was a photo of this bride. And she had this gorgeous gown with this long train. And she was in this big room, and I'm like, wow, who got married? And I had to scroll back up, and it was, seriously, I was being marketed to by a marketing company, and they were saying, you really should use excellent imagery to catch someone's attention and then tell a story based on that. And I was like, I took a screenshot. I'm like, that's so good. The feelings, where people say all the feels,
right.
That's what you want to go with. So like I was thinking for that, when you were talking just now, I'm like, oh, you could have a picture like that of someone in their wedding gown. And then the story is Mr. Smith loves his granddaughter, and he knows that she's getting married this summer, but his body is failing him. He doesn't know how much longer he's going to live, and his hearing has changed, but he wants to make sure he can hear these wedding vows. So he saw Dr. Deanne Rudden, and she was able to fit him with hearing aids, and it changed his life. And so he can now go to this wedding, hear all of that, and he's achieved a goal, somehow having the story. And the picture really had nothing to do with audiology or hearing aids or anything. It was grabbing your attention, and then your story is all about the emotion. And mind you, something else that just occurred to me that in storytelling, what is his name? I'm sorry. Donald Miller, he says, and this is me applying this to the hearing world, we should be the guide. It should not be about us in the story. So in that story, the person themselves has a problem. It's everyone's grandpa. And Dr. Rudden is the guide that helped rehab his ears so that he got to be that person who won in the long run. Because we all want to root for the underdog. And we all want to see happy endings. That wedding.
I mean, if you think about it, it's almost like the hero's journey, right? So if you're unfamiliar with the hero's journey, you have like the hero of your story who is actually like the grandfather in that circumstance. Then, they set out on this journey to go to the wedding, and, they know that they're having these struggles. And then along the way, they meet a guide. So like if you're using Star Wars philosophy, it would be like, we're the Obi-Wan Kenobi or the Yoda of the story that helps the hero move through all of the things that they need to move through to struggle, to find that dark night of the soul moment, and then return back changed from where they had started out their journey. So same idea. That's another story structure you could use even.
Yeah. I even read about Pixar movies always have the exact same storyline.
They do.
Yeah. This happened and then something bad happened. Yep. And then you think that they're going to get out of it, but no, then this happens and then it couldn't get any worse, but it does. And eventually that person comes to the rise. But they say like, if in the first 5 minutes, it's going to turn out okay, you're not going to watch the rest of the movie.
Right. So like the Pixar formula is kind of like this. Once upon a time, there was this. Every day, this. Then one day, this. Because of that, this. Until finally, this.
So good.
Every single time. If you go back and watch those movies, they all follow that structure. And it's successful because people know that there's going to be a struggle, but there's also going to be a resolution around it.
Right. We really do inherently, most of us, want to see everything wrap up with a nice pretty bow. And they've done studies on this, and this is why like indie films don't do as well as these blockbusters that follow that exact same storyline. Right. So, and commercials have been doing this for years. They don't have the real person who actually bought that house from Century 21 and wanted the swing in the back. No, this is all fictionalized and it's telling a story, but we know that it's the same story. Each person that sits in that same chair is telling pretty much the same story. So if you can get like even just pictures or talk about, problems with the restaurant or that TV is blaring, we know who's going to be their guide and how it's going to resolve itself.
And I mean, I think the important thing is to tell the story so that anyone watching the story or reading the story could see themselves in those places and could, remind themselves that, they're not alone. Human beings are absolutely hardwired to connect through stories. So Absolutely. They insert themselves into that story. You see yourself as the hero of that story and the potential of overcoming whatever struggles that you're having as well. So, and then feeling confident that there is hope and there is a resolution to that story.
Absolutely. I wonder how hard, I've never done it, but I'd like to try it. How hard would it be to go through the depression, social isolation story where someone is just sitting by themselves and they're sad, and then the resolution is now they're the life of the party and they're laughing and talking and going out more and just overall just being more connected with people.
Right.
That would take a filmmaker, I would think, to do, or maybe not.
I mean, I think you could tell it in a lot of different ways. I mean, you could tell it, you know, in the container of a film, or you could tell it in a blog, or, you know, a lot of different ways. You know, maybe it's an ongoing story.
True. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I would like, if you can put in the show notes, a cheat sheet.
I have one.
Oh, you do? Awesome. I would like to take a challenge and try to apply them. And then we're going to have a follow-up second part of this. We'll create a series. And what we're going to do is you and I are then going to, I'll put up my screen, and we're going to look at what I did. And if you don't mind, Deanne, actually giving constructive criticism of, ooh, well, I would have said this, or maybe you can tighten up this, or let's make it, and maybe we can have 3 different forms or examples following, and or, well, what do you think? Having 3 different story types or outlines and using one type of media, or should we mix it up? What would be good? Because I want those that are watching to get something out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you might do kind of like if we're doing this for our colleagues, you know, maybe one example of how it might be used on a website, maybe one example of how it might be used in a social media post on Facebook, because that's probably the most common place that people are posting. And then maybe, you know, an outline for what a blog might look like. You know, not necessarily writing out the whole blog, but just kind of an outline format. And it could be the same story if you wanted, or you could try different structures.
Yeah, I'm going to try it because I know that I want to really, I haven't done it yet, and I really want to implement this. And I think that this is valuable for all of us because we hear the stories, we get the hugs, we see the tears, we know these stories. But it's hard not being someone who went to school to be a writer. A lot of times it's hard to even convey to whoever it is that's doing our website or doing the social media, this is what I want to do, but I can't describe it because I don't even know what it is that I want to say. So I really think this is something that has to be done by the actual professional because we know the stories best. So I'm going to play with it. I'll look at the show notes and I'm going to see what I come up with.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to, you know, select a clear structure, find something surprising or unexpected that maybe happened to that particular story that you're trying to tell, and then just keep it simple and keep it focused. You know, narrow it down and try not to get, you know, go too far off to one side, especially if you're trying to keep it to, you know, more of a short social media or even website kind of situation.
I love that. I love that because yes, this, I tend to get into too many details. Yes.
I get in the weeds.
I'm sorry.
I get in the weeds when I start, you know, just kind of goes off the rails and I have to sometimes write out a really like first draft, or like your shitty first draft, so to speak, and then write the story out and then look at it and reformat it, repackage it once you have it out. Instead of looking at the structure and trying to fit it into the structure, write the story out first and then apply the formula structure to it.
That's great advice. Yes. Exactly. You could be in the car and suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I know the story, but you're not going to have time and you should not be driving and writing out stories, you know, but you can write down Mr. Smith or something and then apply it later, and that's good, and edit and fine tune it. So I imagine that what I do is going to be too descriptive and I'm going to lose my audience persons or anyone who's reading it. And I don't want them to just fade off and not get to the end, because we want them to get to the resolution, right? So if you could help me and see what I do, and I won't take anything personally. I'm pretty good with constructive criticism, because I feel like I am the average audiologist that's struggling to stand out in this world. Or, you know, I've worked in hospital departments where we weren't allowed to have a web page, but we might be able to send out a mailer or something, or somehow if we have one opportunity to catch someone's eye, we wanted a good one, and we want it to make sense to them, and we want them to act on it because it pulled them in. There was this emotion that whatever it was that we gave them, it could just be a little flyer, but if it has the right content, it goes a long way.
Right. So what I'll do for you is I will get you the story structure to put in the notes so everyone can look at it, and so that they know what you're working off of, and extra bonus points to you guys watching if you want to play along. So you can try to do that. Dawn and I can get back together. And then if you want even more resources, and you go to my website. So I have a personal website, deannerudden.com, and that's without the apostrophe. I know punctuation in my name is like a killer. Just DANNERUDDEN.com. And you find the place where you can put your name and your email address in. I will be happy to send you like a packet of resources that will give you not only the story structures, but also give you some social media tools that you can use in your own practices.
Wow, thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is so good. Thank you. So we're going to, this is all to be continued. I'm going to do my homework. Everyone else is going to do their homework, and we're going to hear what Dr. Rudden has to tell us about how we could have tightened it up. Because I feel like the more we do this and the more we practice it, the more it just becomes simple, innate. You said, here's this structure, here, let me give you an example, and you thought of one like that. I can't do that right now.
And it wasn't as focused as it should be. Like just the thing off the top of your head, it's not as focused as you want it to be, but practicing it will just get you better at thinking in that format container. And then, you know, you can take your time with it, so it doesn't feel like it's off the top of your head.
Absolutely. And then little by little, the more of us that are telling these stories, the more that people realize, you know, there is a need in this world for a profession to lay hands on people and help them to hear better. As there are more and more people who are being affected by hearing loss and they need our help, they need to know it's going to be okay. And we need to stop having the 499 or wanted 53 people for a fake study. We need to actually use credible information that enables them to know it's going to be okay. The outcome is positive, and this is just what we need to all do as the world is changing. And it's so simple. Look at what she has created. This is so fantastic.
And I just want to say, I think we've inherently told the wrong story, like you said. Like, we've told the story of loss, we've told the story of price, we've told the story of technology, and those are okay stories, but they hit people here. They hit them, you know, in the head. They don't really hit them in the heart. They don't touch people in the way that I think we desire them to know themselves and to know what we bring. So
absolutely. I think also with all the information and the facts that have been coming out about depression, social isolation, and possible dementia, we are fear-mongering also. And we're just giving the negative and we're pushing them away. And, you know, and nobody wants to hear about the bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. They need to hear the outcome. They need to hear the whole story. Yes, we need to give some facts. So you're right. We need to start with the head, and we need to put in the heart. And what's the last one?
The last one is the core. So those universal truths that we all can connect with.
Yes. So good. Thank you so much.
Oh,
You are
you.
awesome. I'm thrilled that we got to do this today, and I can't wait to see what the next episode has, because I'm a little scared. I'll be honest. I'm really worried that I'm going to fail at this, but I'm going to try. And, you know, talk about being vulnerable. I'm going to show you all what things look like before they're finalized. And I hope that everyone learned something today. And I hope that you definitely go to the show notes and go to Dr. Rudden's website. So it's drdeannerudden.com.
It's actually just deannerudden.com.
Okay, so you're going to go to deannerudden.com. And you're going to get your freebies that she's giving as bonus today, which is so cool. And we're going to make sure you watch for the follow-up. It'll be about a week later. And after that, I'm thinking we probably will need a third part of the series just to wrap it all up. So I will take your edits, and we're going to see what the final ads look like.
Great. Great. I'm excited. Yay.
Yay. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we will be seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you guys.